Hello, and welcome to Chase Fluid Art. My name is Steve Chase. I'm a practicing artist and proponent of abstract cellism. Since I'm extremely uncomfortable in front of a video camera and obviously reading from a script, I feel like the shakiest gun in the West. So I'm going to switch to a still image of myself and then narrate. Trust me on this. The video will be a lot smoother this way. I believe you're here for information, not comedy. I started down the road of fluid art in 2017, and it's been quite a journey. What drew me in was an immediate attraction to cell formations that I was seeing from modern artists. I don't have the credentials to be a teacher, but I do have enough experience to pass along some observations and techniques that might be useful, particularly for folks just beginning their own journey. My approach here is to share the methods I use to create cells in my paintings and to zero in on what I think are the most important things to understand. Although there's a lot of narration here, I'll also include video demonstrations of my use of an air compressor as a painting tool. So let's get started. After a couple of hundred mediocre paintings and trying out every technique I could find, I felt overwhelmed and going nowhere. So I decided to start over. I quit trying to create paintings and focused instead on solving problems. When I look back, it was probably one of the best art decisions I ever made because it took the pressure off of trying to produce a painting and freed me up to concentrate on cause and effect. So starting from scratch, I wanted to understand what causes cells to form. I did some research and found a scientific answer to cell formation in fluid dynamics. In physics, it's known as the Rayleigh-Taylor instability. I'll try to explain it in a paint pouring situation. First of all, it takes a particular formation of paint and liquidity to create an environment for cells to be produced. So let's assume that the medium used here is proper, only using two colors, a black and a heavier dense titanium white, both mixed with the same type of paint and medium. Pour a puddle starting with the black. Then the white is poured on top of the black. Since the white has more density or weight than the black, it'll start to sink down through it. Simultaneously, the black will push up toward the surface because it's searching for stability or equilibrium. As the black is going up, it's combining with the white to a small degree and forming cells. As the paint stretches out radially, it thins and makes the interaction of the colors easier to perform. Obviously, this is a very crude and simple explanation, but it struck a chord and gave me a foundation to build on. Here's a good example of Rayleigh-Taylor instability. A layer of very heavy and dense blue placed on top of some layers of very light paints. American Floetrol was the only medium in this flip cup pour. No enhancer like silicone was used. Note that the dark blue has sunk to the bottom and the less dense paints have risen through it to the surface in the form of cells. So it begins by providing a friendly environment for cells to form, by creating the proper pouring mix. This is the single most important factor in the entire process. It's absolutely crucial, and it takes a lot of experimentation to fine-tune it with ingredients and consistency. So my thought was to make it as simple as possible. Use clean ingredients and get a consistency in the middle of too thick or too thin. So for pours or flip cups, my present formula is 3 parts Liquitex pouring medium, 2 parts Bookbinder's PVA, and 1 to 3 parts paint, depending on the type, and just enough water to thin to the right consistency. It's extremely simple and clean. and the results reflect a clean painting. Here's a close-up of two of my paintings using the same paint, which is Liquitex Soft Body. On the left is my clean recipe with a few drops of 100% pure silicone oil added as an enhancer. On the right is what I consider to be a dirty recipe. It has the same paint and medium, but uses glue all instead of bookbinder's PVA and a hair care product named Fructis as a substitute for pure silicone. Knowing what to avoid makes for a cleaner and better pouring mix. For today's demonstration with the air compressor, I'll be using a Shelly Art hybrid medium, 3 parts deep base Behr number 3453, 1 part polyacrylic, and 0.1 part GAC 800. Then I mix with 10% golden fluid acrylics and it's ready to go. Again, simple and clean. The Behr deep base paint sold at Home Depot is essentially the medium used to create house paint. Credit goes to Shelley Carruthers for this deep base revelation. She's a terrific artist and extremely innovative. After settling in on a basic medium, it's time to consider enhancers to help boost the level of cell production. I've tried dozens. Hair care products, lubricants, oils, KY Love liquids, dish soap, Windex, Rain-X, Tile-X. Well, you get the picture. The one thing all these products have in common is they trash up a painting. Too many unknown ingredients that make paint go wacky. On the other hand, there are two products that enhance cell production, and they are proven and relatively clean. 100% silicone oil and Floetrol. I prefer Floetrol. It's a water-based paint conditioner that's specifically designed to enhance paint. It's the cleanest enhancer I've used, and I think it's a safe choice. Since Floetrol is marketed worldwide by the same parent company, I assumed that its formulation was consistent regardless of where it was manufactured, like Coca-Cola, for example. I was wrong. It's not. I know this because I've compared the products sold in the US, Australia, and Europe. Same species, different animals. Okay, I've laid the foundation and seen why cells form and discussed how absolutely critical the medium is, but I haven't discussed the trigger that puts it all together. Regardless of style, it's the type and amount of force applied to the paint that puts the Rayleigh-Taylor instability into motion. And I don't mean just powerful force. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. It's a finessed and at times a delicate force, like tilting the canvas, for example. I think it's best illustrated with air pressure and spinning, created from a puddle pour. So I'll do that now. The puddle. I like to limit the total number of colors to 3, on occasion 4, plus white and black. I'll start the layout by sticking a needle in the canvas. This will provide me with a bullseye for making sure that all the paints are in line when layered out. Progressive layers of color shift and move around, so this little step keeps me in line. Next, I'll lay down a small area using one of the colors used in the puddle. In this case, the phthalo blue. It's an extra feeding bed for cells if it becomes necessary. Next, a large puddle of base. Artist Loft mixed with 2 parts of American Floetrol or even a satin enamel wall paint because it's cheap and largely tilted or spun off the canvas anyway. Next, I'll spin the canvas to thin out the base. I want a relatively thin bed. just enough to make it easier for the colors to move around. Next, a soft body paint like Liquitex Soft Body or Lucas Krill Studio as a buffer. This one is Lucas Beige. Now it's time to layer the colors, mostly using golden fluid acrylics. Ideally, starting with the lightest density, as per the Rayleigh Taylor example, and working my way up to the heaviest. I use squeeze bottles for more control because I want the layers of color to be spread out and thin. It makes it easier for the cells to rise to the top. In the dead center, I want a little more concentration. Last, a fairly large layer of black on top. This will contain a different formula. 4 parts Lucas Krill Studio Black acrylic mixed with 9 parts Australian Floetrol and 1 part Bookbinder's PVA. It's more fluid and heavier than the other paints, which helps it sink through the colors to the bottom. I first saw the use of air for painting back in 2017. A lady named Susanna Danks was demonstrating the use of air pressure from a hairdryer on YouTube. She was very good at it. She inspired me to give it a go, but I got nowhere, no movement at all. I had an air compressor handy, so I gave that a shot, and it worked, but it was extremely hard to control. And even after 3 years of use, it still drives me nuts sometimes. I'm going to put up a big red flag here because unless you're willing to spend hour upon hour upon hour creating a mess to master the touch that it takes to control it, I would be leery to recommend it. It isn't easy and it ain't cheap and can be pull your hair out frustrating. That said, if you're willing to try and gain control and you're successful, the reward will be tremendous because you'll now have a trigger to control airflow and power. This is a huge, huge advantage and adds a lot of variety to what you can create. I have a 2 horsepower, 15-gallon tank California air compressor set at full blast at 100 pounds per square inch. And I use a Venturi nozzle that I found on eBay with my gun for more precise control. I use it a lot in freeform air painting, with cell paintings a lot less, but it's vital to my process. About the demonstrations. This is the first time I've ever tried to video myself, so I'm alone here with my iPad facing backwards. Since I can't see the iPod screen, I'm basically blind, so the reveal close-up shots didn't turn out too spiffy. I wanted the demonstrations to be shown in real time, but brevity prevented that. Some things happen so fast that I had to slow motion some sections of the video to explain it. Some things drone on and on like spinning, so I did some cutting. The little canvas that I'm using here is 12 by 16 inches. It's my practice canvas that I've used and scraped thousands of times. This demonstration is basically my practice routine, so I'm not concerned about covering the entire canvas. Obviously, I'll apply more paint to produce a full painting. I'll demonstrate a couple of styles now. If I want small and clustered cells, I'll concentrate more paint in the center and more base around the perimeter. First, I'll apply pressure in the bullseye, and when the paint begins to crater, I'll raise the gun and apply more pressure as I lift up. A good rule of thumb is that the more downward pressure applied results in smaller cells being produced because the colors are instantaneously forced together and close to bottoming out. I think of it as forced Rayleigh-Taylor effect. They will be somewhat confined because I forced the issue, and the extra pressure has caused the rest of the paint to rapidly move out and away, leaving in its wake a blended color look, or even white from the base if I've pushed things too hard. The bulk of the colors are now around the perimeter. Now it's time to gently spin and spread everything out to finish the canvas. Next, I'll do a more spread out pattern to create larger cells that will cover the entire canvas. This is my favorite style. The idea here is to spread the puddle and have all the colors move out simultaneously so that they'll remain beneath the black throughout. I want to apply just enough air to move the paint out and limit the amount pushing down. I'll start by holding the gun 1 to 2 feet above my target and start a gentle airflow. And then bring the gun down and stop when I see the paint begin to move, but not allow it to crater. This is my gauge and focal point. I want to maintain that amount of pressure hitting the canvas from this point forward. Now I'll start to lift the gun straight up, pulling the trigger as I go to maintain the same pressure hitting the canvas. I'll end up about 2 feet above it and moving a lot of air at this point. As I'm moving up, the air is getting less concentrated on the surface and spreading out, so the paint is spreading out and just slightly down to get the ball rolling. The key is having a powerful air supply and a trigger to control it. As the puddle radiates out, it thins and reaches its limit, and you'll notice that the black sinking and cells starting to appear. It will now be time to start another type of force by gently spinning the canvas. Centrifugal force will spread and thin the puddle even more and create an ideal environment for the Rayleigh-Taylor instability to take effect. So spinning is now the star of the show. This type of force is sneaky powerful, so I want to be careful and not allow it to get out of control. My push pins underneath the canvas are the only contact of the canvas with the surface of my spinner. If the canvas slides at all while spinning, I'm going too fast. That's my gauge. After spinning some, I'll stop and evaluate. If some areas seem bare, I will very, very carefully apply pressure with an extremely delicate stream of air. Just enough to see it move and no more. Cells will develop as spinning continues. Another observation. If the overall spread is weak on one of the sides, I'll pull the canvas to that edge of the spinner and use the centrifugal force to pull the paint in that direction. I want to be mindful that all the paint is moving in that direction, and overdoing it will cause distortion. If I've overcooked it, I'll move the canvas to the opposite side and spin to get things back in shape. Then back to the center, spread it out, and cover the canvas. Obviously, there are more refinements involved to finishing a painting, but this is how I get the ball rolling. These two examples show the extremes of the Rayleigh-Taylor instability. There are multiple possibilities in between. As I'm signing off, I decided to add some condensed clips. The first one shows a slow and low stream of air and some very careful cell stretching technique to fill in the gaps. That's it. I'm all talked out. I hope that this video shows how the Rayleigh-Taylor instability influenced my perspective and put order in my process. With the proper mix, combined with controlled force, cells can be produced and in a variety of ways. So in conclusion, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I thank you for taking the time to watch it. When all is said and done, these are just my opinions and my approach. The only thing written in stone is that the mix is the linchpin of the entire process. Everything else depends on it. And by the way, I love feedback and like to hear your thoughts. I assure you that I'll read every comment and respond when I can. Please like, join, and share. And also visit my Facebook page at Chase Fluid Art for lots of pictures, and my page on Fine Art America. Links are below. I'll leave you with this thought. Abstract cellism. Use that term with potential buyers. It takes away the idea that you're simply pouring paint. Let them know that it's a classification that truly epitomizes abstract art.